Constitution, the Founding Fathers are long since dead. Who does it protect now?
Only those in power like Bush, the congressmen, and the senators, and the upper echelon who never go to jail.
Are those who reside and preside in the District of Columbia?
That's right.
All right. Now, when you look at the amendments, and a lot of the amendments look like they're directed toward we, the little people, because we had prohibition and prohibition rescinded and all this stuff. So what do we do when we say that there is no constitutional protections for we, the little people, and yet we see these amendments pop up? How does that translate?
That's the fraud that they use. They throw a bone to the people, and every once in a while they'll allow some win that is nondescript, that ain't going to bother their or upset their operation, so they allow a win. That's all.
All right. So although those amendments did hold sway, I'm just picking these out because they did.
Oh, okay. Well, how they put those amendments in there is through the 14th Amendment. That's all, and under due process clause. And the due process clause by Felix Frankfurter says it's a matter of transcendental nonsense.
Okay.
Means nothing.
All right. So although we see that.
Yeah, it's only the due process that they will allow one to have.
All right. So they can still enforce that because, like you said, it's allowed to have to be.
Right.
To be.
Yes.
Okay, and one of the things I bring up also is that it's interesting that Padilla, no matter what you think about him, was a U.S. citizen who was drugged forever, had no habeas corpus, and it was like, well, what happened there? But nobody cared because he was supposed to be a rat ass.
Right.
But it's like, well, no, he was supposedly given the right to due process, but here we have an example of if we don't want to give it to him, he don't get it.
Uh-huh. Oh,
is that true?
Yeah, because it's a privilege. It's not a
right, and privileges can be extended and retracted.
At will.
And we, the people, do not, the little people, do not have rights.
No, that's right. Same way with Social Security. They can retract that anytime they want. They can wipe out Social Security tomorrow. You have no rights to it. You have no contract rights to it. You have no insurance rights to it. You have nothing.
And I think they've already done that.
Yeah, they will be pretty soon because, was it you that said it about the pension plans?
That they're going to be wiped out very shortly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that comes from a global situation. I am not the first source.
Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously we're looking at something very, very trepidous. Also, let me ask you this, too. I'm looking at this also. All right, we talked about the amendments. Let's get down to the bullet points, and that is, we don't see this in our history books. This seems to be the province of those who would consider us conspiracy theorists and tinfoil hat wearers.
Yeah.
But did, in fact, the United States government go where to declare its bankruptcy in 1932?
Well, the average person thinks it was bankrupt in 1932, but if they go on to AG Press and pick out the Geneva Convention rules and the books, which I put, and I did get them,
okay,
they're not in a set of books. They are in a set of telegrams and letters back and forth between the dignitaries, and they never went bankrupt because even in one point in one of my books, you can read it on ATG Press, Firestone actually paid for a country's debt to the United States.
Are we talking about the corporate tire guy?
Yeah, Firestone.
And he came in and did what? He wiped out a country's debt?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a good guy, right?
Oh, yeah, well, he bought and he turned it over to the United States for his tire company and for his business. You know, it's one hand washes the other. Why do you think that the United States went over in Vietnam and tried to destroy that country? Why? Because what happened in 1933 or 29, 30, 31 is Firestone had rubber plantations over there.
In Southeast Asia.
That's why Vietnam War was fought over the rubber plantation, and France told the United States, don't get involved, they won't win. But they had to go over there to protect the rubber plantations because Tires are made by Buna and natural rubber. If you don't have the natural rubber, you won't have a tire that will last.
I mean, have you ever seen the documentary Hearts and Minds?
No.
Well, there's that what you just said, because at that time, the ambassador from France to what was called at that time Indonesia.
Right.
Actually, I mean, in this vintage documentary, looks winsomely into the camera and said, Dulles offered us not one, but 2 atom bombs to take care of the situation.
Right.
And he just looks and he goes, not one, but 2. And of course, then it goes on. I mean, so here you have a situation, like you said. I mean, it's all about money. It's all about corporations.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's why we're in the bailout, what we're in. And everybody says, oh, yeah, I didn't want the bailout. I didn't want the bailout for the $700 million. Let them all go belly up. So what?
All right. Let me ask you this also, because as we go on, all right, as it affects us today, we overlook war powers, and we also overlook trading with the enemy in the banking situation. So let's take it top down. What about war powers? We're still under it, right?
Oh, definitely, yes. We're not. They've never undeclared the war. The minute they undeclare the war, they would have to repeal 12 Stat 319, 12 USC 95A and B. And when I asked Ron Paul if he would do that if elected, he flat out said no. He knew exactly that if he did, they would lose control and be under peacetime. And they would have to rescind all the laws that they made. In fact, if one really goes down to it and fights this, they can rescind all the laws, the Sedition Acts, and everything else that the first Congress put into effect because they weren't legally required to hold that office under the constitutional parameters.
Right. Now, you know, in the little knowledge I gained from being in graduate school about communication law, and we talked about this to some extent, going back to those bad old days in the First World War where Oliver Wendell Holmes kind of cast some kind of votes that he was not really too happy with, but still in all that happened, you know, who knows what the real truth was. What I'm asking you right now is, one, as I've stated to some people who are listening right now, not from the United States, we are under war powers, so we never declare a war because we don't have to because we're in a perpetual state of war. That's right. Number one. Let me ask you this. To address that, and I'll give you the B portion.
Okay.
Are we continually...
Oh, yeah, we're continuing under war powers, and we found out in Raleigh, North Carolina in 1996 when we went to the archives and found out that the rent controls that were installed in the 40s were still viable, and when they tried to repeal the rent controls in North Carolina here, they said actually you couldn't do that because it's under the War Powers Act, and that was in 1969.
Yeah. All right, now, secondly... we don't declare wars anymore.
No. And
we're still just going on with our provocations.
Right.
We don't really need Congress to declare war because is it out of their purview, and we do just basically what we want to do.
Yeah, what it is the president declares the war and says the war, and because for the conscience of him and everybody else, and to make it look like it's real, they give it to Congress, and if Congress wants to declare an actual war, they can, but they haven't. They haven't declared a war since 1941. Yeah, 41.
That was the last time.
That was the last time they actually declared a war. All the rest has been police actions, but under the War Powers Act of the president in control of the courts and everything else by the gold fringe flag. When you see the gold fringe flag in any building, whether it's a church or anybody else, and I got to laugh when I go to church and I see the War Powers flag sitting up there under the control of because they're all 501c3s anyway, so they're controlled by government.
But the sad thing is that they don't even realize it, and they will sooner or later, but they don't really realize it right now. If you say anything to them, they think you're a wacky-thing horny new era.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now we have the bankruptcy, which, of course, did not really happen to us, but it happened on what you call it, a theoretical or a financial level.
A theoretical era because they had to protect the banks from going belly up because the banks stole everything. And, of course, you know, they are under the control of the United States, and they are a U.S. person, and therefore, because they are given special treatment and given special statutory immunity, they don't come under any laws that they can screw you over, they can kill you, they can do everything, and they're protected by the Constitution from any action against them. Any at all. They can actually kill somebody and get away with it.
Well, I think we're seeing that every day.
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. That's why they're all protected, and all the ones in the financial system on Wall Street and all these businesses, they're never going to be prosecuted.
No, not at all.
No, they won't be prosecuted at all.
All right, so let me just crystallize this if I can. We're dealing with the overlays of war powers, trading with the enemy. Now, the trading with the enemy, that involves the bankers. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, because when you sign the signature card on there, the signature card gives them carte blanche over anything that you give to the bank. It's theirs property. We're only using Federal Reserve notes because they're trademarked and have a lien on them when the minute they're issued, and their obligations of the United States. And you agree to all the debt, Title 14, look at Section 3, Section 4, you can't question the debt if you're a U.S. citizen. You're a slave, you're a subject. A British subject is the same as a U.S. citizen. All they did was transfer the subject over to being a citizen, and everybody thinks, oh, man, I'm a citizen now, I'm not a subject. Well, I'm sorry, but they're in it for a bad awakening when they realize that the United States citizen is a subject of the United States, which is a subject of the Crown. And when I wrote my book, and I got it from Wake Forest University, the professor there, it's in the book, and it's a verbatim quote when he said, the Englishman came over and said to him, how do you like taxation now with representation? Yeah.
You know, honestly, without us ever being together again, even as a kid, I looked at this and going, well, what's the difference? I mean, okay, so the Brits didn't tax us, but we tax ourselves. And, of course, I was like, you know, your history teacher's like, shut up.
Yeah, right. I mean, because, let's face it, if we, the people, the average Joe, created a Constitution, why would we put it in to allow people to have the power to tax us on our property, on our wages, on everything else? We wouldn't.
All right, so what we're looking at really is that even though there was some unrest, no doubt about it, amongst the colonists in the 13 colonies, and they finally had to go to blows, but in the end, really what happened was they exchanged their payments to the Crown directly to the Crown indirectly.
Yeah, because that's why on your IMF it has on the blocking code 300, and you read that, and it's a tax treaty, and it goes to 26 U.S.C. 1426, and that is the debt to the Crown that is owed the United States, that you as a taxpayer of the associated membership by being a U.S. citizen, that you're subject and liable to the income tax. Because the Federal Reserve is only collecting through the private IRS corporation, which is private, and in fact I have a letter to GAO, and they finally did their audit of them and admitted that they were a foreign corporation, so I picked up on it from Walter Van Buren when he sent it to me, and I wrote to the GAO and I asked specifically what foreign country was the IRS chartered in, because I wrote to 2 states and asked for the charter and asked if they were allowed to do business in the state of Nevada and the state of North Carolina, and the Secretary of State sent back from both states a sealed document saying the IRS is not authorized to do any business in this state.
All right, now, this is going to send some head spinning, and I understand that. I know there's some wars that are very hard to win. But I want to ask you as we leave the situation, for at least this time, and let's be frank. I mean, and you've always been like that, so there's no problem here. I take a look at what's happening now, and I'll just tell you today, Lady Biz and I were by